back at it. We're gonna talk some more football with Coach Bick today, which is gonna be real exciting. Talk about what's going on as we're really starting to approach like summer camp season, which is I guess for St. Anselm it's already begun, and some of the other schools has already begun. But talk more about that. Talk some football recruiting. And he's had a really. I think he started out at Keene University, if I'm not mistaken. I think he may have played there too as well. I think, right, Coach? So, so he played for Coach Garrett. I'm guessing. Is that right? Yeah.
If he went there.
Yeah. So because Coach Barrett's been there for 20 years.
Long time.
Yeah,
over 20 years.
Yeah. So he's played for Coach Garrett's, now at St. Anselm's, doing a fantastic job there. He's really been essential as the recruiting guy there and really helping to bring in a lot of these top players that they've been getting. He's a receivers coach, tight ends coach, which they have a plethora of those guys as well. And St. Anselm's really become a powerhouse in the Northeast 10 Conference. Let's bring Coach on. What's going on, Coach?
Hey, fellas. How you doing?
Coach, appreciate you taking the time. I know you have a busy schedule and whatnot, so really appreciate you stepping aside and kind of doing this with us.
Yeah, it's really cool for me to be on, man. Really cool.
Awesome.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Coach, give everybody your background that we touched on a little bit, playing background, coaching background, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So I grew up in Manchester Township, New Jersey, down here in Southern Ocean County. Went to Manchester Township High School. I played my high school ball there for Gerard O'Donnell, who's coaching there still now.
Still there, legend.
Yeah, man. Good dude. And we had
really
some awesome,
good. Oh, sometimes too much of a good dude.
Yeah. We had some awesome assistant coaches there too, like guys like Steve Fence, who's at New Egypt High School
Head coach
now.
New Egypt, great. Another great dude.
Yeah. Robert Picton. I mean, Joe Taylor was my O-line coach. Just awesome guys that really made me fall in love with ball pretty early on. And then I wasn't a heavily recruited guy. I played offensive line, 6'1", 240, that typical D3 kid. I got lured to Kean University. Actually, Joe Martucci recruited me, who I'm sure we all know that name pretty well.
Yeah.
Legend.
He was the running backs coach at Kean at the time and recruiting the short conference. And he gave me a shot. I went up there and I was blown away. That place is special, man. It's a unique university with awesome people. Dan Garrett's an incredible human being, and I owe him more than you can ever think. So I got to play for him. I played for him and guys like Dan Garrett, Keith Miglerino, Dave Galante, Matt Kreider, incredible human beings. And then once I finished my playing career, it was, okay, football is really over, huh? So it wasn't over for long. I immediately started being a student coach in my undergrad that last spring. That rolled right into a GA ship. As a GA, I worked with O-line, tight ends at times, receivers at times, right? That's the beauty of coaching Division III is you get to learn on the fly, man. And I learned so much so fast. And then COVID hit and it was like, okay, I'm finishing my GA ship, but now what? Right. So it was kind of a strange time, but I was fortunate that Coach Garrett moved some pieces around and brought me back, and I signed back on for another GA ship. Yeah, man. So I rolled it back, went for it again. After one more year of being a GA there, I got the opportunity at St. A's, which is incredible people up here too, man. And I got the opportunity to have a camp, actually. They were running their New Jersey camp. I was there for Kean, working it, coaching, recruiting, and they had an opening and it worked out. And I trusted the people up here, and I'm so grateful I did. So not a long journey, but it's been fun, man.
Recruiting coordinator, which you're in that role now. Talk a little bit about a lot of the functions that you have to do at Division II level from a recruiting standpoint, from getting prospects, gathering information on those guys, to setting up camps, those kind of things. Talk about that.
Yeah. So A big part of my role as recruiting coordinator is really handling a lot of the events, right? And working in conjunction with the head football coach in terms of where's the staff going, when are they going there, and then when we host on-campus things, what's that going to look like, and taking care of all that. So again, our head coach is a great guy, and we see eye to eye in a lot of things, but we do a lot. And I think something that Coach Brain, Coach Adam, and myself understand is the more you can make your place a brand name, the better off your name recognition is going to be, and the better off your recruitment is going to be. And we go a lot of lengths to try to make that happen, because we do believe in our product here as an academic place. So once people can start putting 2 and 2 together, and they can start seeing St. Anselm around, and then they're going to be like, okay, we know what that place is. Now they're starting to win some games, and then your recruitment can heighten a little bit. But I think we also do a great job of targeting places that, one, we have a niche in, and 2, have really good football. Like New Jersey's huge for us. We're going to have like 38 guys from Jersey on the team this fall. We have 2 guys, myself and Coach Brain, who have connections in the state, 1. But 2, I think we offer a unique D2 product in this state where we're scholarship level football. It's high level football, but it's also a high academic place. And there's a lot of great student athletes in this state looking for that. And other states that we're the same thing is Texas, Florida. Like, those kids are looking for the same thing, right? There's certainly a lack of Division II options in Florida. We've done really well there because of that. And then in Texas, there's a plethora of Division II options, but not really what we offer educationally. So it's those 2 states have been great for us. And then Coach Adam, our head coach, does an amazing job in the DMV area, DC and Maryland, where he identifies our type of student there first, and then the football down there, man. It's made a big difference for us. So having those states nationwide, and then really trying to win our backyard in Massachusetts, has been really good for us. And then finding the 3 or 4 guys in our home state of New Hampshire that are good ball players. And there is a few of them every year, and we try to keep them home, man. And Massachusetts, we want to just continue to do well there. We've done well there the past 2 classes. And it's good high-level football, and we're starting to get a pretty good name recognition in that state. So it's kind of getting your arms all around that and being efficient with the budget, right, in terms of when and where you're going, and trying to get as many live evaluations and build as many relationships as possible is what we always try to improve on every year. We do a lot of self-evaluation when it comes to that.
Talk about New England, because I think it's really interesting. There's a lot of colleges that play football in New England, but it's never been like a huge hotbed. Massachusetts is probably the best of the New England schools as far as talent-wise. But me and Derek have talked a lot about this, and I'm getting feedback here, but I'm gonna try something in a second. But talk about the prep school situation in New England. What's that like? Because we talked about this, but we're really curious how it all worked. The New England prep. There's so many of them. I played ball at UConn. We had a bunch of guys from, like I said, like Maine Central and Thomas More, all these different places, Avon Old Farm. Talk about that from a recruiting standpoint.
Yeah, so that is definitely unique to New England.
Very much, yeah.
And it's definitely starting to gain more and more traction. A lot of times I can see the value in it. So prep school essentially is a 5th year of high school. So you lose no eligibility. You can certainly raise or further raise your GPA while also getting another year of football tape versus really good competition. So there's really good leagues up here in New England that have developed that is really high level ball. I mean, they did their showcases the past 2 days. And I mean, there's guys all the way from FBS to incredibly good defense D3 players at these schools. And a lot of times it's already good academic kids that are now going to this place that's incredibly academically rigorous. So it can make yourself even more valuable for places like us where we're like, okay, well, now this kid's bigger, faster, stronger, he's a year older. Now he has good tape on film again. And we know he can handle college-like atmosphere because that's what those places are like, man. Like a lot of time it's boarding school. You're living on your own. You're doing your own laundry. You're taking care of yourself. And it's really like a college schedule. So there's immense value in that for sure. And then New England as a whole, I think it gets better and better. You know, being a Jersey guy, getting up to New England, like, you know, you got a lot of pride. You're like, it's not going to be like Jersey, but there's good football. Connecticut surprises me every year. So does Massachusetts. I recruit Maine and Vermont. Where those states are unique is you don't realize how small they are, but how massive they are. Like, there's not a lot of people living there. But, again, there's 5, 6, 7 guys a year who could be scholarship players out of those states. But it's kind of cool because it's a little more old school recruiting up there. Like, you got to do old school digging and talk to the right people. But
you physically have to go and see them and talk to them and like, hey, this guy's coming in our building, and that's not really what we've seen a lot of this become as you move forward, right? So those states up there, you know, like even, you know, my uncle lives about 10 minutes from Castleton in Vermont, right?
Yeah.
And you just, you know, you see that dynamic, and it's so different, right, than down here. So you kind of really got to adjust on the fly. And credit to you guys, like recruiting your backyard in terms of that, I think has made, like you said, the difference. It's not the bulk of the guys that you're looking for, but it's the quality from those areas that if you can pull in can really kind of change the roster.
Correct. Yep. And, you know, I think our name in New England holds more weight. I think families
100%.
understand the academic value of our place in New England. And I think it's starting to grow to the Northeast in general.
Right.
But it's a daily battle, man. For sure.
Yeah, I could imagine. So Maine and Vermont, that's interesting. And Maine, I remember we used to get players from Maine, and they would be tough, hard-nosed players. They'd be surprisingly good athletes because they probably were overlooked. So
and sometimes they're playing 7 or 8 man ball. So you could get a 6'5" lineman who had to run routes and backpedal and cover people because there's only 3 linemen on the field.
Right.
That's so interesting because of the 8-man football that they have there. And then I'm curious what some of those drives are like. If you got to go from like Orono, Maine down to Portland.
They'll catch you off guard now.
Those are like what 4 or 5 hour drives. I'm assuming that's really, really interesting. Now, Jersey football obviously is very different. I'm sure Jersey football players when they come up to St. Anselm, as I remember playing in New England, like you kind of have like a pride about you, like that. Those other states don't play as good a football as maybe New Jersey, and then obviously Florida guys probably have a pride about themselves if they come up to St. Anselm. The same thing, like, hey, we play tougher football in there. What type of atmosphere does players from some of those more powerful football states inject into your program?
Yeah, it's awesome. And the first thing I like to say is, number one, like we have awesome kids, and that's by design. Like, I think our staff does an amazing job of, we all say we do it, but I think our staff, especially the past couple of years since I've been here, they do a great job of combing through everything and really finding out like the heart of a kid. And also when you get them on campus or get them around your current players, like that's going to reveal itself. And, you know, if guys spend time with our players, we take their insight, right? What do you think about Johnny? Do you think he fits in here? You know, they ask him the hard questions because that's incredibly important to us. Is that selflessness, right? Like, and that allows you to win games. Like last year, man, like we struggled on offense. We had injuries, you know, we weren't at our best, but our defense was dang good. So, but if you're selfless enough and your team can fill into that mold, like we can play to our strength and we can win some games, you know, and hopefully it evens back out going forward. But that's what we were, and that's what we made happen. But the number one thing they bring is a competitive edge, man. Like when you're sitting at the dining hall table in preseason camp, night 1 and 2, like there's the arguments going. Texas ball is better than Florida ball.
Yeah.
Florida ball is better than Jersey ball, right? Like they're going to go back and forth. They're going to talk about who's tougher and what nationally ranked teams they played and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, I think we do a great job of finding guys from all over the place that are very like-minded. So it's cool to see those relationships build. Like we have a DN from Austin, from Lake Travis in Austin, Texas, right? He's best friends with a kid from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Like
Right.
those things are cool to get at our place because we get to recruit pretty nationally. So
That's because they both like fishing and hunting, and you know what I mean. Lake Travis right out there on the lake, and
Yep.
Maine, they definitely hunting up there. No doubt about it. That's cool though. That's a great thing. They find commonality.
And I think that's something too that, like, you know, you're starting to see with the transfer portal and that type of stuff. Like, you're seeing those relationships not really, you know, come to fruition, or they don't really develop like they used to at certain situations, because guys all, you know, everybody's trying to get to that next level or that bigger spot. Whereas, you know, you have a place that like St. Anne's where guys can come in, like-minded guys, maybe not from the same area geographically, but like-minded in the fact that, hey man, we're here for a reason, and it's not really just football. That's a big piece of it.
Mhm.
But I'm trying to set myself up for the next 40 as well. And I think you guys have done a great job, you know, just looking at the kids that you've taken to really kind of keep those kids together and preach that, and then have them all buy into it, which has now led to your success on the field.
Yeah, certainly. And I think you hit it on the head. Like we generally get focused kids in general, like in every part of their life. Like, yeah, they're football guys, but they also have a plan for their career. Like they know they want to come to St. A's. They know by junior year they want this internship. They know by senior year they want to be getting paid for this internship. And then they know when they graduate they want to work there. Like
100%.
we get those type of guys. And those, to be honest, are usually our best players. Like if you look at most of our best players, there are 3-5+ kids in the classroom, which at our place is not easy to do, right?
Correct.
And that's because they have great habits, man, and they're focused. And I think we're at a powerful place where when your best players are generally your hardest workers and have great habits, that's a powerful transformational place, because now all those young guys are watching how it happens and how to do it. You know, and as coaches, now all you got to do is steer them and continue to point out those guys. So those young guys are like, okay, if I want to be him, I got to take care of this and do this and put in extra and sleep and eat right and study 1,000,000 times a day, because that's what our good ones do, man. So, yeah, it's unique, but that's what makes it a fun place to coach too.
Absolutely.
With the wide receiver position, well, wide receivers, you're coaching both wide receivers and tight ends, right?
Yes, sir.
Slightly different guys, although obviously they're used in tight ends are used in the wide receiver capacity much more, obviously now. So talk about you know like when you're recruiting those kind of players, especially wide receivers, and you're going through the recruiting process, and those guys a lot of times have been the stars where they were, and they're going D2. But maybe they feel like, they could have been like, because if you're going to St. Anselm, you're pretty close to the next level, right? So, but there are things maybe either that maybe you're missing, or how do you work with today's kind of world with the transfer portal? How do you continue to develop those kids, help them understand what their expectations are on the team, and at the same time manage them right? Because the hardest thing at your level is you're bringing in some really outstanding athletes, and you don't know if they're thinking, okay, I'm here, to try to be a star and move on, and you're in the process of developing those guys. How do you kind of manage all that in a room? And is that even a thing? I mean, I'm bringing that up. I don't know if it's a thing.
Yep. I think it's a thing everywhere, number one, especially in a receiver room.
Right.
At my place, I don't think it's as bad as many, and I learned this early on from guys like Coach Garrett and Dave Galante. Like the best thing you could do to a kid is just tell him exactly what it is, man, and just let him know exactly where he stands and why he's standing there and what he can do to improve his standing, right? And I've never had a bad result happen from treating it that way. Now, certainly, it's not going to be what they want to hear, But at least they understand, well, okay, it'll make more sense to them than when you try to sugarcoat it and come up with every other reason why, when it's coming down to one thing, right? And a lot of times, not everybody could be the best player on the field, and not every player is going to catch every football, and not every play is going to be designed to get the ball to every kid. But again, I think it comes back to that recruiting process and building a genuine relationship and really finding out what makes a kid tick. Like, when I think about the receivers we signed since we've been here, every one of them probably played both sides of the ball. Every one of them on tape showed them playing defense, running downfield, destroying blocks, making plays, and every one of them on tape showed them blocking people. Because, hey, man, I'm an O-line guy. I'm probably the biggest receiver coach in the country. Right? I want smart, fast, tough kids that are going to play physical, because that's how we make a difference on the perimeter in our offense. I mean, if we're blocking in the run game and in the screen game to spring big plays, that's how we're going to get a chance to have the space to make plays in the pass game. And that's something I constantly hammer with my guys. Like, we end every meeting with perimeter block tape. Like, they might not even notice it, but the last clip in every meeting is us blocking people well. And because I just want that subliminally to be the last thing they're thinking about when they hit the field. Because at the end of the day, football, I think, is becoming more individualized as we progress, right? Especially at the highest level in the NFL. They're trying to create it, the NBA out of the NFL. But at the end of the game, like, it's cliche, but it's true. It's an absolute team sport. And some of the best receivers that have played for me were last on the reception chart. But they made all the little plays that nobody talks about. So I think having that philosophy when you're talking with them and not sacrificing that because he's a good player in the recruiting process, right? Like, don't promise things you can't give. Like, I can't promise a receiver he's going to touch the ball every play or even 10 times a game.
Right.
And I think if you promise those things in the recruiting process, it's going to diminish you a little bit.
Right.
Now you can tell them the opportunity that's there and the role that they have a possibility to fill. But I think you have to be very careful when you start talking about production and where you see them fit in and all that. But if you keep it about the team, then you'll find those guys that want to be about the team, and then you got a shot to win, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that when you have, like, obviously when they come into your program, it's you're seeing them every day. It's easier to evaluate how they're doing things. The hard thing with especially receiver, tight end, you can, size is a big deal as much as athleticism, but size is really a big indicator for if he's a guy that you think you might want. But wide receiver, they run the gamut, especially now. Like, you got slots that are smaller, you have outside guys that may be bigger, and you have everything in between. When you go to camp, how I would wonder this, because it seems to me to be a daunting task.
Yeah.
Take away the guy that runs a 4.4, right? Take away a guy that is walked in the room and he's 6'3". I know you're going to look at those guys right away. That makes the perfect sense. How do you find those other, just some of the kids that we know that are with you, like Kyle Various or Liam Stack, who's going to you next year from RBR, like those kind of guys? How do you find those kind of guys? They're big, they're good sized guys, but they're not 6 foot. How do you find it and figure out what the difference makers when you're at a camp to really determine that those guys are for you?
Yeah. A big thing I always look for in camp is acceleration and deceleration and how smooth that is, right? Because, I mean, one of my better slot receivers is probably not nearly in the top 5 on the team in speed, but he can start and stop in a phone booth, right?
Right.
And that's going to create separation. And if you're a big person that has really fluid hips and deceleration, same picture. Like, again, I didn't play the position, so I tried to learn it as I went and from people that did. And so I think that's a big benefit when you're coaching a position you didn't play, because you have no preconceived notion, right? So you look at this position globally, it's how fast can you run forward and how fast can stop and how efficient you can do it. So when I'm watching guys in camp, that's all I'm watching. And a lot of times you can see it in stretch lines. You can see it you could see it in those cone drills a lot of guys are going to do in camp, but you could see it even in routes on air. Like I could see it in a hitch route a lot of the time. Like, are you pushing that thing to 7 and stopping and attacking the football, or are you drifting into 5, right? And those guys are huge. And I think also in receiver, what you can see is a lot of practice is on air, especially in camps. So how deliberate all those guys, right? Like, are they burning their eyes for the football and are they snatching it to tuck away? Like, even on air. Because those are the ones that are going to be really good because they're training those natural ball skills constantly. So those are the things I look for in camp. And then also the intangibles in camp too, right? Like, where are you online? Like, who are you talking to? And in one-on-ones when the DB's chirping, are you the one chirping or are you the one smiling and nodding at them and ready to play ball? You know, those are all the things I take note of too, because those are the guys that fit our place and my type of coaching style. And, you know, I want those guys that love ball, will do anything for it and their teammates. And I think you could see that a lot of the time with just how they work and carry themselves. And I hope that answered some of it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely does, because we see all the time, like, I mean, I've seen like former players, and you probably see a lot of different podcasts and, you know, things that somehow come into some kids get a hold of. And I hear guys like, oh, when you go to a camp, you know, cut people in line so you can get more reps. I'm like, no, the coach is going to notice that you're being
you're doing that.
Ass. You're being an ass, right? There's a way to move yourself to the front without being an ass, right? And when I see guys say that, I'm like, no, you're just totally giving the kid advice to paint himself as an ass, and he's now not going to. Now the coach is looking at him like, okay, maybe he's a good player, but like, is he like you know, someone that doesn't know how to conduct himself, right? And so, and then I see like you know, guys talk about like, oh, you need to spend all this time trying to talk to the coach, and I'm like, that's probably not a good move. Introduce yourself, absolutely, right?
Right.
But let your play, like, you know, let your play stand out and let your performance stand out. Make sure they're aware that you're coming to the camp in the first place. That's a good thing, okay, because they'll know you're coming. But once you're there, let your play stand out and make that the standout thing, and do those reps over and over again. Make sure you get ample reps. You know, you could be assertive, but I see so many. What are things that you think kids come to camp? They're coming to your camp. What can they do? The other thing that drives me nuts. Oh, wear neon shoes. Like, okay. Now you go wear neon shoes and you get beat on a rep, even if you are good, right?
Now everybody's really going to know.
We're all paying attention to you when you get beat too, right? So not just when you have your good rep.
I think that stuff's so funny.
It is funny to me. Talk about what you, as a coach who actually recruits players and actually offers money to players, what are some of the things that you want to see at a camp?
Yeah. And I think something that immediately stands guys apart immediately for me is like, do they have just a sense of urgency about themselves? And it's a focused, controlled sense of urgency. But like you're talking about, like, all right, instead of cutting the line, maybe he looks 2 lines over and that line's 3 less people.
Right. Have
he
some
jogs
awareness,
over,
right?
stands in the back of lines ready to go. Because, all right, who's out there early? Whose stuff's tied up already? Who's stretching themselves out before we even start? Right? Like that little stuff, because in my opinion, those guys who have that sense of urgency are the ones that are going to be the good ones, man, because that's how they're going to act when they're on the practice field too. And when I walk out to the practice field, I hope most of my groups out there already getting themselves ready to go. And that looks different for everybody, but we all know like what that kid looks like. You know, he's lit when you're talking to him, he's looking at you, you know. And he might jog over to shake your hand and say, hey, coach, good to meet you in person. He probably knows your name, knows where you're from, and then he's right back to where he needs to be. He's a yes, sir, no, sir kind of guy. And, yeah, we all like that. But at the end of the day, be yourself, too, when you're a kid. Right. And, like, you don't want to be something you're not, because coaches aren't going to be who they're not, because there's a good fit for everybody.
Yep.
And certain people are looking for certain things, man. But And coaches know what works at their place too.
And I think that's coach. That's like the biggest thing to me, right? Like if you want to play college football, there's a fit for everyone, right? And it's just a matter of finding that correct fit. That takes a lot of self-awareness. It takes a lot of, being humble, right? That kind of stuff. But also just don't bullshit. Go out there, be who you are, right? Now, button it up a little bit, but ultimately be who you are, express who you are. Don't try and be something you're not. It's the same thing with hey, I'm going on a job interview where these guys pretend to be something to get that job. Well, now you have to pretend to be that person every single day. So
Correct.
Look, I'm looking for something. You're looking for something. Let's have a conversation. If it's cool, we're good. Let's rock and roll. If not, good luck to you, brother. This ain't the right spot.
Exactly right. And what I always tell recruits is we're constantly evaluating as ball coaches, right? Always. But they should be too.
Yes.
Everything. Or is the coach talking to the other coach on his phone, or is he watching us? Is he being nice to my family as well? Or, all those little things, right? What's he look like?
If I'm asking you to put in all this time and effort for me, then damn it, you better hold me to the same accountability that I'm holding you.
Certainly. And does he know my name? Does he know where I'm from? Whatever.
Does he
Is he asking me the same question the third, fourth time?
Right.
And I think that's important because just like we talked about, we're all looking for that fit. And at the end of the day, the fit's going to come down to financials, right? Academics, and then the ball. But there's also a personality fit in there too. And you want to make sure all those things are lining up.
Talk about body language and confidence. What do you look for? How players conduct themselves? I mean, surprisingly, it's not a known thing, right? Players don't even realize that they have bad body language sometimes. Yeah. So, what is it that you look for from a body language standpoint and confidence standpoint?
Yep. Number one, is he fazed by things? Right. And I think that I'm always looking for that. When he gets a coaching point, maybe he doesn't is he a palms up guy, or is he just moving on with his life? Okay. Or maybe the DB's chirping at him in 1-on-1s and he's getting holed and thrown. How's he respond to that? Is he going back at the kid, or is he just smiling, nodding?
Right.
So, is he fazed by little adversities is something you could see immediately. Right. If the line's long, is he twirling his hair in the back, or is he watching the guy in front of him? Is he mirroring the movement in his own space so he can be ready to take the drill on? Those things I think are important. And then the other thing is he having fun? I want guys that are having fun, man. Because football's supposed to be fun, and we all love it. And if you're going to play it in college, you better really love it. So those are things I'm looking for. Are you being fazed by little adversities, and are you having fun? And I think you can see that in body language really easily.
Right. And I think it's something that you see too, there's a line between competitiveness and bad body language, right? You get beat on a rep, no one's upset that you're upset, right? We want to see that you're upset about it a little bit. But we don't want you carrying on, right? We don't want you to you're upset, you might punch the air for a second, and then you moved on. All right, I know this kid's competitive. Let's see how he does the next rep. Does this next rep get better because he's a competitor, or does he get worse because he's in his own head, right? What is the way that this athlete learns to how he's going to compete? Because that tells you how he's going to be when you get him for yourself, right?
No doubt,
and because otherwise that becomes something that you have to coach all the time, which I think it has to be at the college level. Although at your level, you're going to have some guys that maybe this guy's an outstanding athlete. You know what? If we could get him a little more in the right direction, it's worth it. This is a D1 talent. Maybe mentality is D3, and maybe he mixes in our world for now and see if we can get him. And then he's just so talented. Let's try it, right? And then there's some guys that are hey, this guy's an FCS talent, FCS demeanor, everything's good. We got to get this guy. We know we don't have to ever worry about this guy, right? Yep. Talk about from a recruiting standpoint, how you manage the different personalities in a room, and how you figure out, okay, this guy needs this guy, I mean, I remember as a player, you have the academic advisors, and I would go into my academic advisor for football, and I go in there, and she'd be like, I'd be sitting there for 5 minutes, and she'd be like, "What are you doing here?" And I'd be like, everybody hangs out in here. She's like, "You don't need to be here. You're a good student. Why are you here?
Yeah.
You don't need to be here. I want to work with these guys. Now, if you want to talk to me about something else in life, great. Let's do that. But how do you work with the different types of players to figure out what they each need?"
Yeah. And I think Coach Adam has a great line that I've really taken and run with. It's, okay, you can't force a horse to drink, right? But how do you make them thirsty, right? So, like, you got to find what makes these kids tick. Some guys are big affirmation guys, right? When they do good, they need to know you've seen it, and you need to be telling them, right? And some guys are more like old school ball coaching, where they're like, okay, only tell me when I'm wrong, tell me how to get better. And then there's some guys that ride that line. I think something we do here that helps us with that is we do weekly academic meetings with your position coach year round. So, like you just said, I have a ton of guys that are great students, right, at St. Anselm College. But it still buys me 15 minutes of one-on-one time with my guys a week. And you never know where that conversation goes, because we do forget they're 18 to 22 years old. And we do forget that, their girl sent them a text message last night that's still bothering them, and that could affect their play. Like, it could be something that little. So I think those one-on-one times is crucial. And there's going to be guys that are quiet, that throw up the brick walls. And then when you have those guys, you need to continue to just keep chipping away at the wall, man. You're going to find something that opens them up. And it could be something as minuscule as you find out they're a Yankee fan, you start talking Yankees baseball, and then it spurs into whatever. So I think you just always got to find out what makes them tick. And again, in the recruiting process, I think we do a good job of that, right? Because at a lot of the time, like in recruiting, what intrinsically motivates the kid is also what's going to push him to the school he picks, right? So you need to be finding out that information so you have a chance to, one, get him to your place, but then two, once he's there, getting the most out of him. So, but one-on-one time, man, and being there as well. Like and you can't just expect like the open office door thing for people to walk into it, right? It's like, oh, my door's always open. They're not going to do that, right? Like, young men don't like to ask for help. We've all been there. But if you say, hey, Thursday at 2:30, we have a 15-minute meeting, they have to be there. And then that's when you can help them. Sorry, Coach, I can't hear you.
I said we lost Derek there. I think he must have had technical difficulties or something. But yeah, no, I think that makes a big difference. Being able to spend that time with them is a difference maker. What are you guys doing from a development standpoint? Receivers and tight ends. What are the things that you guys really focus on to get those guys better? And how much do you guys use the tight ends as a position? What are you guys leveraging with them?
Yeah. In the fall, we used the tight end position a ton. We were a base 11 personnel team that did some 12 and 13 at times as well. So pretty multiple. So finding that time to split the group, in my opinion, is crucially important, not only in practice time, but meeting time. So the way I would do is tight ends are always in receiver meetings, but then there sometimes would be an additional tight end meeting throughout the day. When it comes to development, what we did a year ago, we got a new strength coach a year ago, and he's been incredible because everything's now football specific in terms of how we train, which I love, because if you watch him run a warm up into his first segment of a training session, it's all full acceleration to deceleration, which we know is all receiver play is, but it's also a lot of what football is.
Right.
So that's great. And then everything's just about training explosivity. Like, how explosive can we make you? As a receivers coach, I'm not obsessed with numbers as much, meaning their weight or how much weight they're moving. But I certainly keep that into account in how they're progressing and how powerful they really are, right? You know, like I have some little slot receivers that seem really small, but they're lifting, you know, almost 2 times their body weight in most main lifts. So if they're at that point, you know, that's a pretty strong, explosive kid. So, but very rarely are we talking hard numbers with those guys in terms of weight gain, unless a guy does come to me on the smaller side. Obviously, in the tight end position, that's going to be a little more discussed. So that's the fine line they ride. But we're always trying to push ourselves to just be however explosive we can make ourselves. That's the goal. And I think our strength coach is on the same page with that, and he does an incredible job with it. This spring football, we were in a different place for sure, and it showed on the field. And I'm excited when these guys get back in August to see how that projects there.
Yeah, it's interesting. So when you're going from being a line guy to coach of wide receivers to tight end, now tight ends obviously there's a ton of translation there because of blocking and the inline blocking stuff and blocking from a blocking scheme standpoint. What did you have to really do to get wide receivers to really understand, you know, your knowledge base of coach and in college that happens a lot, right? Guys, play one position and coach in different positions all the time. I mean, it's an all the time thing, and that's always an issue. Like from a player standpoint, not a coach standpoint, a player's standpoint. What were some of the things that you did to really work with them to help them understand that knowledge base?
Yeah, the number one thing I always like to communicate with them is one, it's a collaboration, right? I think in today's coaching, the first thing you always have to explain is why we're doing something and why it's important. And then secondly, it's never my way or the highway. It's I'm teaching you this because I think it will benefit you. And they're going to work hard to do it if they're a good kid. And then if not, you have to have that conversation if it's affecting their play. But if you come to me with good reasoning and say, hey, coach, I'd like this a little bit different and here's why, like we're going to take that into consideration. So I think that's important. But secondly, I mean, I think being organized is everything. And if you're organized and you can teach something simply and it makes sense, and then it translates to the field, I think that's how you build trust. If I'm teaching you how to do a fundamental in the classroom, we then train it in the individual period, and then it comes out in live football play, that's when the trust starts to build. And that's why this spring was really fun, because we had the chance to par it all back. And we started from the top, man, from get-offs to releases to break points to perimeter blocking to catching. We discussed in detail in the classroom what we're looking for in those fundamentals, broke them down into about 3 categories each. Individual period was centered on those, and then they got to do it throughout group and live period of play. And, you know, a lot of it shows up on tape, and now you're talking a consistent language. So now when you're talking on tape, you're referring to something as one word, everyone's on the same page. They see it, they feel it, and then they're like, okay, coach knows what he's talking about. He can help me. And I think that's when you start building a trust in your acumen of fundamentals and the position itself. So that was really cool for me this spring because it forces you to grow too, right? And like,
Right.
That's what I told them. Like, I'm okay with being challenged and asking questions. Let's talk it through because I might have not thought of it that way, you know? And I make that very clear to them. Like I've never run a 14-yard comeback. I don't know what it feels like. Now I've studied it and I've tried to put myself in a position where I can coach it the most efficient way possible. So a better athlete than me can execute it well. But my guys, I think understand that. And it's been really good, man. It's been good.
That's pretty cool. And then when it comes to like starting, it's like my final question. When it comes to like starting on the field, right? And there are some positions that look offensive line, and you know this as a person who played it. You're usually it's fairly. I'm not saying it's always clear cut, but it's fairly clear cut. because there's not as many guys that are good at it. And the guys that are good at it really show the differentiation a lot of times, whether it's maturity, whether it's size, whether it's just their physicality. Wide receiver, there's lots of guys that do different things. I always thought that was even in college, like this kid's really good, but so is this guy, right? And like this guy does this well. How do you go and figure out your evaluation process to figure out which guy goes on the field most, or is your starter, that kind of thing?
Yep. And I think that starts in the springtime, because in the springtime, we have rotation chart. Like there's a first group, a second group, but it's not a depth chart. So reps are equal. I mean, reps are equal from slot number 1 to slot number 4. And everything's pretty base. You're toying with some new schemes. So everyone's getting equal to similar reps. And then that's when you get to put your skill set on display, where you can earn some trust with, just like you're talking about. And that's what's cool about my position group is there is ample opportunity to earn your way on the field if you're willing to do something that someone else isn't, right? And that's why I always start, and my guys understand, like those that show incredible effort and love for their teammates, and that's reflected through their play, they're going to get the most opportunity. And then the guys that back that up with a physical nature of play are going to get the second most opportunity. So if you can get them striving to put those two things on film, then you get to see their full skill set in terms of, because let's face it, the hardest thing to do is coach a guy with the ball in his hands, right? And some dudes have a knack for that. Some guys don't. So, those guys that are electric with the ball, like we're going to find ways to get it to them if they consistently earn that opportunity. So personnel packages are huge. I think our offensive coordinator, Coach Ferguson, has done an incredible job with that. And while keeping it simple, not adding new scheme, but just saying, hey, if we put this guy in this position, it could change this whole thing. And I think our guys are starting to think that way as well, right? Where we can have slot receivers in the backfield and do certain things, or we can have bigger receivers in condensed formations to give us different surfaces and things like that. So I think it's just an extra motivator. But yes, it certainly makes it tougher, and the biggest thing I think players need to avoid is comparing themselves to others, and especially in my position group, like when you're the 5'9" slot that can run, you can't compare yourself to the 6'2" receiver on the outside who's playing physical as hell, right? Like you just compete with yourself daily, and then we'll be in good shape and trust the staff to put you in the right position. And when it doesn't feel like that, have a conversation and we'll tell you exactly why. And I think if you can follow that process, then you have a lot of happy players, one, and then happy guys play for each other and then you got a shot.
Yeah, I think it's a communication thing, right? It becomes how you have to college coaches more than ever have to be exceptional communicators, and much more so than old school coaches maybe in the 90s or 80s, where this is how I wanted you to do it. You either did it that way or didn't get on the field, right? You have to communicate because there's so many different personalities, and it's not just where they come from, but it has to do with all the different things pulling them in different directions. And being able to communicate is such a huge thing. I mean, you talked about the meeting you're having with the players each week. I mean, that's an enormous thing. What kind of support? So D2, I think that's the hardest thing versus the bigger levels. There's endless support staff. What kind of support do you guys have? So you get a player, something you can't solve. What do you guys go and do from there?
Yeah, to be honest with you, as an assistant coach in our program, it's immediately going to my head coach, right? If I have something that I can't handle my own, I go to him, and then he'll communicate with the greater campus community to get it solved. And what Coach Adams done is he's done a great job on our campus of building real relationships with those resources, whether it's the mental health center or even little things like housing and the registrar and things like that, where players can trust him to help them get through that issue. So that's been good for us. And, our head coach quite literally will drop anything for his players. And I think that's something as a coaching staff that's incredibly important that we all do, is that we understand we have jobs because of them, right? Like if they weren't there, we wouldn't be there. So I think our staff does a good job of understanding that. And then the next thing our staff does an incredible job with is it feels like we have a big support staff and a big staff, because like at our place, the DB coach knows all my receivers' names and knows something about them and probably recruited half of them, right? And I know the D line's names and
Right.
who they are and where they're from and what's important to them, right? And having relationships just outside your position group that sway sides of the ball, it just enhances that atmosphere. And I think that's something our staff naturally has done an incredibly good job at, just because they're good people. And
yeah, I think that's a big deal. I was curious. That's so interesting. So it goes right to the head coach, and then you guys solve things from there. It's that's a great resource to always have a great head coach, and that you guys have that, and you only continue to evolve. I can't thank you enough for coming on. I don't know what happened to Derek.
all good. I scared him off, man.
I saw there was an image that where he was like this, and he was stuck there. And I said, oh, is there something wrong? And then I realized that his thing was stuck, and then he was gone, and then he never came back on. But listen, it was great. I mean, you gave a bunch of great information, and really the information on camps or recruiting is so invaluable, because players, they get information from so many sources that, like, there's not tricks to it. There's being yourself. There's doing the best you can, and finding a way to get coaches to notice you doing it the right way, right? And I think that's and ultimately that gets you where you want to be anyway. Because then you're not in the transfer portal, right? Then you're not transferring because you sold something to a coach that he didn't really want, and he sold something to you that he didn't really want.
And I think that's recruiting. That's everything. If the motivation's pure on either side, right, between the program and yourself, then you're naturally going to find the right fit for yourself. And I think it gets convoluted because it feels like it starts earlier and earlier every year, but the decisions are still being made at the same time. Like everybody has time. I think you need to take a deep breath. And if you're one of those big time players, like we all wished and hoped we were, it's going to be obvious to you, and you're going to have all that sorted out well before your senior fall. And if you're not, just enjoy high school football, because it's a one-time thing. You will miss it, and stop trying to get to the next thing without just succeeding where you're at. Because even at FCS level, like a good senior season can change a lot of things for you. So I think guys, just trust the process, ask the tough questions that are important to you and your family, and have a conversation with your family. Like, what can we afford? How far am I going? What kind of school am I looking for? Like those conversations, so all of them can be on the same page. Once you start talking to staffs, that's what's going to spur you to ask the tough questions that really can make you or break a decision for you.
Absolutely. The best thing you can do when you're in high school is enjoy, like you said, enjoy the actual games and football and being with your teammates, and then try to know yourself as much as you can and what you want.
Yeah.
And what you really want. Look, everyone has pie in the sky, everyone has dreams, and there are plenty of guys that does come true for.
Yeah.
But what's not just what you want at the highest level, but also know what's acceptable to you, like where you would be happy, what you want out of football, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fundamentally, do you want to play college football? Not, I want a scholarship, but do you want to play college football?
Yep.
Because if you just want a scholarship and you go there and you really don't want to play college football, you're going to be home anyway soon.
Hey, if you want a scholarship, you should have started cracking those books in 8th grade. Like that's, right. That's how you get scholarships in this world, man.
Absolutely. Great point, Coach. Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you real soon, Coach.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was great.
Great summer. All right.
Take care.